Va 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 vivi vivi va 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 vivi vivi va 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 vivi vivi va 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 vivi vivi va 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 vivi vivi va 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 va. Right. Good afternoon and welcome everybody. Daniel Jugenis coming to you from London, United Kingdom as always, and it would be wherever you are. It would be good morning if you're on the west coast, well probably a good night if you're on the west coast of the United States and Midwest, and good morning if you're on the east coast, and in Europe if you're on the same time as me, London, Greenwich GMT time, then the time check is just after 2:30, and for every time zone going east it's 1 hour, so it's going to be also good afternoon and good evening. Okay, right, now I was just doing my vocal exercises, showing off. No, I just felt a bit croaky and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to start this video and I'm just going to do it just to clear my voice, and it's given me a kind of renewed energy. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is about life. And no matter what happens to us or the world, life has to go on. A friend was supposed to visit me today, but they couldn't because they were advised by our glorious idiots in government not to travel. Now, I see some wisdom in not traveling, but do you really need Boris Johnson, to tell you that? Common sense would dictate that, but I live in central London, the part of central London that borders on the East End of London, or East London. Well, definitely the East End. It's East Central London. The zip code, postcode is EC, in my case EC1V. And what I'm hearing around me is life going on. The school close to where I live is open. You hear the kids screaming, doing what children do, the work of children, play. That's happening. I hear people outside my apartment block in the garden having lunch and talking. There's a hospital nearby. The hospital hasn't closed down. People are going in and out of the hospital. So life is going on. So I was kind of disappointed with my friend that they weren't brave enough to venture out. And the reason being is that the public transport, the buses, the trains, the underground trains are virtually empty. Now, I can't talk about rush hour in London. Well, I can actually, because I had an interview at the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport last Wednesday, if I remember rightly, and that was at 4 p.m. So the interview lasted an hour, so I got caught up in the rush hour. So there's loads of people on the train, but it wasn't what it usually was. There's loads of people, but it wasn't like being a sardine packed together with a load of other sardines in a can. But it was still busy, and I was glad when I got off. But what I tend to do, as far as I can do it, is that if I have to travel, then I will not travel during rush hour. If I'm working 9 to 5, then I have no choice. But even when I was working 9 to 5 at the Cabinet Office back in 2018, I used to start getting to the offices at like 6:30, 7 a.m. in the morning, and do my work, and by 4 p.m. I was gone. I mean, that was towards the end of my contract there, a few months before my contract ended. So I was taking precautions even then, and I've been doing things like that ever since. If I have a casting, most of them, or auditions, most of them are outside the rush hour, although there are a few that are like 4 o'clock, 5 p.m. You have no choice. I mean, you might hit rush hour, but when there's a backlog with these castings and auditions, sometimes by the time you leave, I can put it this, rush hour's over. Sorry, yeah, lost my train of thought. Yeah, rush hour's over. It's a little bit more quieter. You can travel home much quicker. Yeah, life is going on, and I know that, and I'm taking this pandemic, the COVID-19 stroke coronavirus. I'm taking it seriously, but as I've said before, the way I'm leading my life and have been for the past 18 months, 2 years, it is kind of like business as usual for me. Although today I kind of feel like Number Six, the Patrick McGoohan character in that cult TV series, The Prisoner. I feel like I'm not a number or a statistic. I'm a free man, but there is this Number Six thing going on with me at the moment. It's not that I'm making myself a prisoner in my own home, but I'm aware that a lot of other people are, and for good reasons. But I am cynical. I am something of a conspiracy theorist in that, this is doing the will of people higher up the food chain. I mean, dare I mention that word Brexit, the whole EU referendum, the result that came, the campaign, the Leave campaign. I mean, that essentially got the masses to basically commit suicide, pretty much, because they voted for something that's clearly not in their interest. There is this thing about taking back control of our borders, taking back control. Well, how is it that a lot of the remaining countries in the European Union have independently, closed their own borders? They didn't go to the EU president or the EU Parliament and requested that their borders be closed. As sovereign nations within the European Union, they took that decision in the national interest and closed their borders. So this crap that the likes of Nigel Farage and whoever else are talking about taking back control on our borders. We had that within the EU, and now that we've put ourselves into that position, we've got this situation that we have to deal with in the pandemic. And personally, and it is my own personal humble opinion, that I don't trust this government, the British government, to keep us safe. I'd rather take my chances with President Donald Trump. I really do. I just don't like how nasty, insular, and xenophobic our great nation has become. And this whole Brexit thing is a divided nation, and it's going to be felt for years. So brings me back to what I'm saying about life goes on. I'm at home today, and there's things I need to do. I probably won't go out for my usual stroll or shopping or errands or anything like that. I'll see how the afternoon progresses. But right now, I'm home. I'm here talking to you all, and there's paperwork and other things to do. So I might go out for 10 minutes and wander around and come back and do what needs to be done. So, yeah, I was talking to somebody yesterday evening, and I'm saying, it's hard. Okay, the majority of us living in the nation in Britain today were around when there was a First World War and a Second World War. Now, I was born in the early 60s, so I kind of grew up in, from early, mid, late 60s and definitely the 70s and the 80s. So, as a child growing up, I saw people and I knew people who lived through both world wars. And when there was a crisis going on, like the energy crisis of the early 1970s here in Britain. I mean, it happened elsewhere, it happened in America as well. But we had it more severe. We hadn't discovered, as a nation, we hadn't yet discovered North Sea oil, that the North Sea was full of oil. So we were relying on oil from other countries, and when the Arabs turned off the tap, we felt it really badly. So we had to go through a period of power cuts, of saving energy, and there was huge campaigns about saving energy, not leaving windows open, not leaving the heating on too long. And one of the things that still unnerves me to now, even though it is more than nearly 50 years ago now, was power cuts. Essentially, you're in your home with your family, you're watching TV, you got your lights on, and suddenly everything goes dark. That was something that the government mandatorily did to conserve energy. You're in the dark. So you were existing without, well, there's radio, you had your radio, but in terms of if television was your comfort, you didn't have that. You're in the dark with candles, and if you didn't own a radio, well, you were essentially screwed. It is a very solitary existence. And there's a lot of these people who had gone through 2 world wars, and they're going through this in later life. Now, kids during the Second World War would have been at that time in their 20s, not possibly, depending on how old they were. If they were teenagers, then they were probably in their 40s, late 30s, 40s, right? They may not have served, but their parents did. They had family that did. And the thing was, this whole thing about power cuts and conserving energy and television. If there wasn't a power cut, television ended at 10:30. It didn't faze these people. They just carried on as if nothing was happening. They just kind of got up and got up in the dark. No electricity, no nothing. They went through the motions that they normally went through, and they went to work, and nothing fazed them. And this attitude, I think, was passed on certainly to my generation and generations that followed, because when we had, in America, the Americans had 9/11 in 2001. In the UK, specifically London, we had 7/7 and 22/7, which happened, the 7th of July and the 22nd, of July 2005. We had a couple of terrorist attacks on the London Tube and on buses, and essentially the authorities locked off Zone 1. Central London was just locked off. No trains, no buses were going into Zone 1, Central London. And I remember exactly where I was on that day. I had a teaching assistant contract up in a place called Chingford Mounts. That's northeast London. And I kind of did that job, and pretty much wasn't anywhere near it. The closest I came was that I went through King's Cross Station an hour before a bomb went off there. And I got the Victoria Line train to Black Horse Road in northeast London. Black Horse Road, in northeast London, and got a bus from there to Chingford Mount. And I came back the same way, got the bus back to Black Horse Road Station. And of course, all the tube stations were closed. And I wasn't familiar with that area, so I just jumped on a bus and prayed for guidance that I was being taken the right way. Fortunately, I got to Walthamstow, where there's a big bus station, and I got a 47 bus to to Shoreditch, which is just on the outskirts of Zone 1, where Zone 2 begins in that part of East Central London. And my daughter actually had recently started driving, and she called me up and said, "Dad, do you want me to come and collect you?" I said, "No, darling, you're home, you're safe, you stay there, I will find my way home." And I did. But I remember watching the news programs that day, later that day, and there's one shot, it was an aerial shot of Waterloo Bridge, and you saw people walking across Waterloo Bridge, and you can see they were mad as hell, but they were just getting on with it. You know, I mean, I talked to people years after who went through that, and one guy, he lived somewhere in northwest London. It took him 3 hours to get home from work. He walked all the way northwest London. It's upper northwest London. It wasn't Maida Vale. It was somewhere further up there. I can't remember where it was. It was past Halton, but it took him 3 hours to get home. Now, I kind of touched upon some of this about what I'm doing, why it's still business as usual for me, and you know, I was accused of seeking praise, being arrogant, being presumptuous. But you know what? What we've got now, and I know friends who vote for Brexit, and they are the most smartest and most effective people that you will ever meet, and they're not soft. But I do think that post Brexit, there are a lot of people who have gotten soft. You know, soft, stupid. I don't dare say ignorant, but they've gotten soft. Definitely gotten soft. I've noticed over the past few years that right wing commentators talk about they talk about Snowflake, the Snowflake generation. That's been going on and being discussed for years now, and I need to always find these things come from right wing broadcasters, commentators, journalists. We now have something called woke. I don't know what the hell that is. WOKE, woke. They talk about the woke culture, and I'm, as somebody who is a Democrat and a centrist, who looks at both sides of the argument, be it left, right, centre, and makes up his own mind through his own, listen to the arguments on both sides and doing some research and come to his own conclusions. I'm starting to wonder whether there isn't something about to this woke culture. I haven't looked into it because to be honest, I'm not necessarily interested. I have noticed right-wing commentators are talking about television and film, and most notably the Star Trek franchise and the Star Wars franchise. I do see some of their argument there, but I'm just wondering if this woke mentality, culture, whatever it is playing into people's stupidity in locking themselves up and not getting on with life. You know, I mean, look, if I never left the front door of my apartment, I'd starve to death. I literally would. And as somebody who needs to feel the environment around him, I've got to go out. I've got to step out, even if it's for 5 minutes. I mean, this may sound stupid, harsh, but there's only one way to get into this world, and there's a million ways to leave it. I remember a classic line from a western called Hombre, with Paul Newman, where he played a white man who grew up with the Apache as a child. And I remember when he was faced off with the villains of the piece, namely Richard Boone, and Richard Boone says something to him about, you've got a lot of bark on you, boy. And the Paul Newman character came back, John Russell's name was, came back and said, well, we all got to die. It's just a matter of when. Okay? Now, I don't know. This, for all I know, this might be the last video message that I ever give. I could go out, fall under a bus. Not my intention, but something could happen. I could be out going about my business, and a bomb goes off on a bus. I could be on a tube train. Same thing happens. It's happened to people. It happened on 7-7 and 22-7 here in London. You know, I just can't become number 6 because Boris Johnson and his government wants me to be a prisoner in my own home. You know, we don't know how people get this. I don't know how people get this virus. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it's airborne. You could just get it. And that's that. You know? And maybe, you know, I might be doing a video entry where I say, look, I'm self-isolating because of that situation that I've got in. I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I mean, I remember always going to job interviews and being asked, where do you see yourself in 2 years' time? And I used to trot out the usual answer. And now I said, look, you know what? I don't know. I really don't know where I will be in 2 years' time. Back in 2018, I thought I'd turned the corner and I was going to stop going from one job to long bouts of employment to another and the odd acting job. I thought I turned the corner. But past 18 months, it's just reverted back to where I was. Not that I wanted it that way, but that's the way it happened. You know, do I have it? I mean, I don't know if I have any control over my life, to be quite honest. I know I know who I am. I know what I think. I know what I feel. I can't talk or speak for anybody else. As I've said before, you know, what people think of me and what their perceptions of me are is really and truly none of my business. I know who I am. You know, again, every morning, you know, I go in the bathroom, I have a shave, you know, I go through the motions, I look in the mirror, and I can live with what's reflected back at me. Now, if people have a problem with that, or the way I think, the way I speak, and I have issues about my accent anyway already, well, that's on them. That's their business. That's none of me. I mean, I know that I've been judged on the way I sound and my accent. Well, you know, I can do something about that. I can do something about it, and I have done it, and it's not changed. You know, you can take the boy out of Birmingham, but you can't take Birmingham out of the boy. I mean, that's where it is. You know, I was born in Birmingham. I spent over 30 years in Birmingham, and I moved to London in my mid-30s. So there's still a lot of Birmingham in me, though I'm pretty much a Londoner now. I've been here for, you know, 23, 24 years. So I'm well tuned into London. I mean, I don't even know what goes on in Birmingham anymore, and it's only 120 miles north of where I'm standing right now speaking to you, but it's just too many bad memories. You know, I won't go into that story. It's a bloody long story, believe you me, but I've never felt the need to go back there. And again, that's a long story and a story for another day. So I'm looking at the timer on this, and I'm over 23 minutes going into 24 minutes. And, you know, my intention is actually keep them short to a few minutes, but it never seems to go that way. More so when I have something to say. Now, I've mentioned this elsewhere early on in other diary entries, that I don't actually script this. I don't make any notes about what I'm going to talk about. I just have a vague idea, and I go with that idea, and it leads into other things. You know, one could argue, excuse me, my voice, let me take some water. One could say that, you know, I'm rambling. Maybe I'm rambling. I just think I've got something to say. Excuse me. Yeah, but that's me. When I'm on a roll, I'm on a roll. So we're coming up to 25 minutes, and there is the other story I was talking to you about a friend. It's in an earlier one. I'm not sure where I am with them. although they did contact me last night. The magic doesn't seem to be there. So it's just kind of playing along and see what's happening. Although somebody who lives in Minnesota, well, I know at least two people who live in Minnesota. One doesn't talk to me anymore, sadly, and the other one, they're both females. The other one, a really lovely lady. I hadn't heard from her in months. My dear CC, to her DD. But sorry, that was a big but that came out there. Out of the blue, I got a message from Facebook. I kind of woke up. It was after 4 a.m. in the morning, and there's this message. I thought, God, CC's calling me. So not calling me. She messaged me, and I just messaged back and didn't expect. But I messaged back via Facebook Messenger and just thought, well, she'll respond or she won't. And she came back, and so we were to and froing on Facebook Messenger, and find out that she's had a really hard time, and discovered a few things about her, that she's actually an English noblewoman, and she has a manor house. She's actually a lady of the manor, but she's in a situation at the moment that she wants to come back home and she can't. So I need to be there for her, as I am for all my friends, but particularly her, because we've had a very close, warm friendship. I would say a warm, loving friendship. So I'm quite worried about dear CC right now. So I will kind of keep you abreast of things as I hear them. I mean, it's her personal business, and it's one I don't think that I can go into too much detail. But the Me Too movement would be kind of interested in the asshole who's actually treating her the way they are. And if I was there, well, don't say what I'd like to do. I might come off worse, I don't know. But I'm here in London. There's nothing I can do with what's happening, all the way in Minnesota. The only thing I can do is be for her here and help her any way I can. But hey, life goes on. She's my people, and I'm here for my people. And those of you who've taken the time to watch this and to listen to this, you're my people also, because by having the patience to hear me go on and on and on for nearly half an hour, you've got to be my people. So I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to stay with this and to watch this. I really appreciate that. So as always, it's nearly 28 and a half minutes I've been talking. So as always, I'll say, be good to yourself, be good to each other, look out for each other in these very difficult times. If there's a neighbour that you haven't seen, knock on the door, you get the drift. So, again, be good to yourself, be good to others, look out for yourself and others, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. So, talk to you then. See you then. Take care. Bye now.